First of all, we have to keep in mind the way St. Thomas addresses the question of unbelief. Of course, he is referring here to unbelief, the non-acceptance of the Christian faith. Therefore, there is a difference between unbelief and non-belief. They are totally different. Unbelief is the rejection, in some way or another, of the Christian faith, whereas non-belief is the rejection of religion, any religion in that case. Secondly, the idea of unbelief means embracing a belief that is not the Christian faith. So it could be another religion for that matter. Now, St. Thomas says that there are three types of unbelief. The first type would be the fruit of ignorance, that is to say, non-possession of the Christian faith. Secondly, by way of rejection, that is to say, opposition. And the third one would be either in the sense of dissent or deviation. In that case, it would be heresy. Now, when he comes to refer to unbelief, of course, St. Thomas speaks of it as a sin. Why? Because he says that it is aversio a Deo, departing from God, turning away from God, no true knowledge of God. And therefore, the one who does not believe is someone who departs, who keeps God far away. Now, he also says that there are different types of infidelities in this case. And he speaks of two ways. First, that one fights against the faith, the Christian faith, of course, fights it before he accepts it. And this, of course, refers to those pagans and heathens who have fought against the faith before having it preached to them, for that matter. Then the second one would be those who fight against the Christian faith after they had accepted it. And this, of course, would refer to apostasy and heresy. Fine. I would like to take two specific topics. First, the question whether one should dispute, organize disputations with unbelievers. And secondly, whether the children of unbelievers whether they should be baptized, even though their parents are unwilling. Now, as to the first, St. Thomas is very subtle in the way he distinguishes things. He speaks of the advantages that need to be considered by way of the one who disputes and by way of the hearer. Now, as for the one who is disputing, it is praiseworthy to debate in order to refute error. Now, this is very important because St. Thomas, in the Summa contra Gentiles, goes back to this question and says, and he is right, of course, that one does not dispute in order to prove the faith. One disputes in order to refute error. As regards the hearers, of course, there is the advantage that if they are instructed and they are firm in the faith, there is no difficulty. But if they are weak, if they are harassed or attacked, therefore a public debate would be necessary in order to strengthen them in their resolve and and as an encouragement for them to deepen their own faith. And of course, it also helps them to realize the errors against which they are being faced. So in this sense, a debate with infidels is not, of course, meant to prove the faith. It is meant to refute error. And in this sense, it is beneficial to the hearers. But then Thomas refers to another important article, which is Article 12. And actually the question is, are the children of the Jews and other believers to be baptized even though the parents are unwilling? And Thomas says no, definitely. And he says that in spite of the teachings of some church fathers, The authority of the church, which is obviously greater than the fathers, has always been against the baptism of Jewish children against the parents' will. Now, this is also a very important point, because in 1272, the Pope, who was contemporary of St. Thomas, of course, Gregory X, issued an encyclical precisely prohibiting the forced baptism of Jews and, of course, giving them certain freedoms. Freedom against harassment, freedom of worship, etc. So we see also that Thomas in this article is very much in line with the teaching of the magisterium of the church on this point. And therefore, Thomas is emphasizing the right and the duty of the church to teach these religious freedom, and at the same time giving protection to those who are in some way or other under their authority, at least in those times. Of course, we're speaking about the medieval period. It is important because we are living in a situation of religious diversity. It is not an exception now, it is a social reality everywhere. And the need to, first of all, deepen our faith and at the same time recognize the faith of the other is of capital importance. And Thomas teaches us these two needs. The need to know the other, but at the same time to see in the other a challenge to deepen one's own faith. Another point that Thomas teaches us is that we should not be afraid to communicate. Of course, today you would not have the disputations that one had in the medieval period, obvious enough. The atmosphere, the environment is totally different. However, we are also in a situation where the Christian faith is placed under pressure. And it is placed under pressure even with arguments and sometimes even with certain social pressure. So these ideas of Thomas are important in order to give us insight into how we should reply to objections that are leveled at us, and at the same time be able to deepen our own faith in our own tradition. An interesting point that I would like to make here is that Thomas, besides the Summa, wrote a very short treatise which was entitled Reasons for the Faith against the Saracens, Muslims, Greeks and Armenians back in 1264. And he based this treatise on a quote from the first letter of Peter, chapter 3, verse 15. Always be prepared to give the answer for the hope, and then he adds something else, and the faith that lies within you. So in this sense, when we are addressing believers who are non-Christian, and non-Catholic for that matter, in that case, we are not only showing that we know our faith, but that we are witnesses to the faith. And I think both of them need to go together.